A very good afternoon to you and a warm welcome to this edition of the Citizens Chat Show, streaming on YouTube at Civic Space TV. My name is Judith Atim, and it's always good to have you join us. Today we are talking about the withdrawal of the UPDF Amendment Bill and the role of regional blocs in resolving the M23 DRC crisis. And I'm joined in this conversation by my esteemed panelists, starting from my immediate left, Dr. Robert Ojambo, who is the head of the History Department at Kyambogo University and a regular on this panel. Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Next to Doctor is, of course, Honourable Miria Matembe, seasoned politician, former parliamentarian, former Minister of Ethics and Integrity. A warm welcome to you, Doctor.
So what am I current? I'm not dead. When you start former, I want to say the president.
Senior citizen.
And the child of God.
Amen.
So forget the past. The past has gone. I'm here present. How are you people there?
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable. Next to Honourable Miria, of course, is also Honourable George Stephen Odongo, who is a member of the East African Legislative Assembly. Honourable, good to have you on the show once again.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And last but not least is retired Major Awich Pollar, Director for External Relations at the NRM. Major, you're most welcome to the show.
You want more present?
Please.
Also an advocate of the High Court.
Yes.
Superior and subordinate courts there too.
Okay. Thank you. And fits very well with actually this discussion we're having about the amendment of the UPDF Act. And just a little bit of a background for you, especially Honourable Miria Matembe, and to our viewers. On the 7th of February, that's last week, the NRM Parliamentary Caucus met at State House in Tebe, and they made a number of resolutions, but I'll read two. There were actually three, but I'll read two. The first is that the UPDF Amendment Bill, which was in Parliament, be withdrawn. And second, to give the Attorney General time to draft the new proposals into the UPDF Amendment Bill, pursuant to the Supreme Court ruling, and that an extraordinary caucus meeting be convened to discuss the proposals of the bill. Well, the UPDF Amendment Bill 2024 was under review by the Defence Committee of Parliament, and it sought to, among other things, align the UPDF Act with new government policies and evolving command, control, and administrative structures within the Army. And the decision by the NRM Parliamentary Caucus to withdraw the UPDF bill followed the recent landmark ruling by the Supreme Court that it is unconstitutional for military courts to try civilians. And this forms the basis of our conversation this afternoon. And were you there for that discussion?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so you're the right person.
You also go in the caucus?
Yes, I am.
So I'll start with I would like to start with, I'm just going to throw a random question and then you'd see what you'd like to respond to. The question, of course, that people are asking is, of course, the implications of this decision by the caucus to withdraw this bill. What does this mean? If you may, and then I walk backwards this side.
Okay, maybe context first. The caucus was invited by the chair of the caucus, who is the president, and he briefed the caucus that he had had extensive conversations with the different major stakeholders after the Supreme Court ruling and looking at the implications of the Supreme Court ruling. He also took us through some of the areas that he was concerned about, specifically on his mandate to ensure that he can continue to inspire peace and security in the region, in the country. So in the circumstances after the ruling, he had sought the counsel of the different stakeholders, including the UPDF. And as a remedial action to some of the issues that he had raised, he had proposed some areas that required amendments. Remember that the Supreme Court ruling also one of the issues that the Supreme Court had raised was the overreach of the court-martial, plus many other areas that the Supreme Court had touched. So he felt that, yes, number one, it was good. Those were the President's remarks. It was good that the Supreme Court had actually identified the weaknesses in the relationship between the functions of the military court martials and the overall judicial system, the structure, and I think later on the senior lawyers here will come and break it down. But he then said, since the Attorney General was one of the stakeholders that he consulted, and he said the Attorney General told him that there is already a UPDF Amendment Bill under consideration by Parliament, and some of the proposals that emerge from that consensus would require amendment of the UPDF Act. It was prudent that they withdraw the UPDF Amendment Bill that is being considered by Parliament and include some of these areas so that when it is brought back for consideration by Parliament, they would then deal comprehensively with all the clauses that have been affected, that have been proposed after this court ruling. And I think it is within the procedures of Parliament that it is possible that a bill can reach a certain stage, and if the sponsors of the bill feel that there are still areas for consideration, they will go through that process of withdrawal, and then it is withdrawn. So as it is now, the Attorney General will then withdraw the bill and then integrate specific proposals, which I am not privy to, because that was all that was discussed. There was no debate about it. It was only in principle to give powers to the Attorney General to withdraw the UPDF Amendment Bill, and then the Attorney General will then include specific clauses that have not been captured in the Amendment Bill, and then reintroduce that to the House. When that is done, the caucus then will go and debate the draft on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, sorry to cut you short, but beyond the Supreme Court ruling, were there other specific concerns that the NRM caucus had in relation to this bill?
Because it's still in a draft form, it has not yet been considered. Neither has it been brought forward to the caucus for consideration.
Okay.
So it would be presumptuous to imagine that there was areas. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Major, you're an advocate of the High Court, but also you understand the UPDF Act. Perhaps you have a better understanding of it than the rest of us here. First of all, what contribution would you give, either in addition or just to expand our understanding further of this?
Well, I can give an addition to what Honourable Odongo has said. First of all, I was in that caucus. I attend the caucus because a caucus is an organ of the party under the NRM Constitution. It's an organ of the party, like you have NRM Women League, NRM Youth League, NRM Disability. And therefore, as a director, I attend the caucus because it is an organ of the party. Because as secretariat, we need to listen in and we need to advise. We need, for example, legal. Basically, as a caucus, ideally, the legal advisor is the director, legal affairs, NRM, not even the Attorney General. So we attend, and I was there. But I left prematurely because I had visitors from Kenya, from the United Democratic Alliance of Kenya, 20 guests, their chairperson, their General Secretary General, and others. But the Attorney General started presenting. But just fast forward about what could have been in the bill that had been presented. One of the things I know which was in the bill is that there was a provision in the Act that provides that, there was a contention whether or not a person can appeal from the court martial court to ordinary court, say to Court of Appeal or Supreme Court. And erroneously or so, there had been appeal entertained. Then in the case of Lieutenant Ogwang, the Supreme Court turned and said it is not allowed. Now the Supreme Court argued that Amama Mbabazi, who was a Minister of Defense, had actually put appellate provision in the regulation. And the court said, if you want an appeal is a creature of the act, not a creature of a regulation. So if the army wanted appeal as such, then it should not have been provided in the regulation, should have been provided in the act. So that is what was in the current bill. And I think other command structures, because there's also a provision where the CDF now has more powers or something like that, and that had to be provided for. So one thing I'm sure is to make sure in the other draft was to incorporate the appeal as a matter of an act, not as a matter of regulation provided by Honourable Amama, good OB of Intare School. So that is one of them. Now, with the pronouncement by Supreme Court, therefore, they're saying now, look, many issues have been raised. Why would you go and amend this Amama thing, put it in the act to allow appeal, and yet there are many other issues? Why don't we make a comprehensive thing? Because now, because Supreme Court, and you never can tell, maybe now the position will be that since Supreme Court says don't, I'm just giving you as an example, if the consensus be, and it has to, because if the Supreme Court says don't try civilians, and you leave it in the statute book, it becomes an idle and a redundant provision. So the only thing would be to amend by way of deletion, that this bill now seeks to delete section this. So that is possibilities there. But over and above, we know that a Supreme Court ruling has to be complied with, and government is doing it. And maybe I take this before I leave this to prove that this is the jurisprudence, the science of law. When members of parliament go and pass a bill, they assume it is nice and good. If you subject it to operation, you see the gaps, including gaps which are unconstitutional. So if the courts rule it out, then be it. Then it means, therefore, the executive who proposes the law, since if you still want to address a mischief, you then go back to see another legal way of addressing that mischief. So in that way, laws keep developing. And that's why you say law is not static, but dynamic. You pass it, you think you have passed a beautiful law, Constitutional Court rule it, there be it. If the mischief still exists, you get a way of addressing the mischief, even if it means by the mother law, that is the Supreme Court, I mean the Constitution or otherwise. But you still have a task as an organizer of the society to address the mischief that is. So it is correct that the caucus recalls this. Otherwise, you would end up amending the other Mama bill, for example, and then you go back for what the Constitutional Court has done. Then you'll be going to Parliament again and again and again.
Thank you. Dr. Ojambo, when you, because you've been, well, you're not a lawyer, but you are an academic, you are a scholar, and by all means, you definitely follow a lot of all these political, socio-economic issues that play out. When these conversations were taking place about the amendment of the UPDF Act and so on, what are the issues that you think need actually a lot more attention? Because we've talked about this in previous shows, actually.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judith, and thank my colleagues. The only problem that befell this country is what I normally explain here, the fusing of the NRM establishment, I don't know whether it is NRMO, and the state in Uganda. To an extent that sometimes it's very difficult to separate where NRMO or NRM party stops and where the state begins doing its work. And that is why sometimes we confuse these things. And even some very good processes that would help this country to move forward are so much put into NRM-like things and people think that the bill now is for NRM, because this bill was proposed by the Minister of Defense. And the bill had a number of remedies that it wanted to correct. For those who might have glanced into it, it had 67 clauses, but mainly to deal with the major 4 issues. No, 6, I think. 6 issues. For some of you, you have been seeing SFC, for example. SFC branch of the army. Only that in Uganda, people are not very good at litigating, but it is not an established form, or it's not, we don't know whether it is in which battalion, we don't know whether it is which section of army. In fact, the other day, members of parliament were asking, where do they draw salary to pay SFC? And no answer clearly was being provided. So the first issue that the bill wants to correct is the administration of the military. And that's how they will put those other things which have been created, like SFC. There is this veteran is something, some veteran something. In fact, if you check on our Ministry of Defense now, they have added their veteran affairs. There is some confusion in the administration of that. There is an issue on the welfare of the army. There has been a very big welfare issue. There have been a complaint of people who have got injured in the army, and it is not very clear on how to deal with them in Mubende there, and they have their headquarters in Mubende there. So there was a problem on that. There is a problem, and then what they are talking about. They are talking about these issues of the law. But of course, withdrawing it and bringing it and putting it is a knee-jerk sort of solution. And now the debate would be as if it is the Supreme Court now that has made this thing to be withdrawn. But if you analyze it carefully, it is true. It is true. It is the Supreme Court ruling. But I know slowly they will come down. I like Segona. Segona is the one who explained this matter very seriously. Said that, you see, people of our age and above, when they get some information, the adrenaline first goes up, but they come slowly down. Because there is even a thinking that some of the court ruling, what the court ruled can be corrected. And if you listen to the president and the CDF, I'm just being kind not to say the president and his son, but the president and his CDF, they think that this court does not understand what it is doing, and therefore it should be rubbished, which should not be the case. The court, the Supreme Court advised, it gave its orders in 2 terms I've explained here, advisory and the absolute orders. So the advisory order is what now we need to take up and go and correct. And those areas are clear. You don't need to, I know they would want the caucus to be the one to influence the legislation and then support it in parliament. But for me, I think it would have been a process that is started by the state without even going to the party first. The party should come in when they are now seeking for support. That's how democracies work, when they are seeking for support. But now it is as if the party is the one which is bringing the bill. And it brings a very big problem. That's why I feel that there is a fusion between the party and the state, which is a problem. Which is a problem that now when, for example, the NRM party loses power, which is soon, I think because even other strong parties have lost power, you would imagine that we have to dismantle everything, thinking that it is NRM, which is not the case. The case is that we are making law for the Republic of Uganda. So I really feel that the bill, I looked at the earlier bill, it was supposed to deal with the very pertinent issues that are affecting politics aside. Politics aside. Of course, somebody will tell you that there is nothing that happens in the state that is not politics. But politics aside, the bill was correcting a number of things, which they have even sometimes they have already implemented. I've told you, SFC, these guys you see with the Madoa uniform and looking like commandos from Vietnam or somewhere, they are a big problem. Only that our country is not very good at litigating. Sometimes you will litigate, but what do you get out of it? But the other thing I want to comment about the bill as I end is that our leaders should be a little cautious and remember our history, how we have always been having problems in this country. The biggest problem in this country has been the conflict between politics and the army. And I see the same thing starting to reoccur again, where politicians are introducing their army, they are introducing their politics into the army, and therefore not wanting to restrict the army to what it's supposed to do, and therefore create an imagination to the army officers. I can see it in the mind of the CDF right now, that the army should be treated as the supreme of the land. When you read the tweets, when you read the statements, I was very disheartened when I heard the statement of the CDF at the Tareseta celebration. It was tending towards that thinking that I'm making, that the army has again started thinking that they are the panacea, they are the alpha and omega of the solutions in Uganda, that without them, I don't know whether it would be like Gaza, Ono State, or Somalia, which I don't believe, because the army is just a section of our people. Majority of the army men are Ugandans who have come from all these groups of people. Sons of UPC, sons of FDC, sons and daughters of all other parties go to the army. So why should somebody think that the army, if the army is attacked, you are attacking NRM? They are two separate things. That mixture of things should stop. Because the army is such a delicate institution of government, because it deals with the most important role of safeguarding our borders. And you don't want it to be partisan to anybody. You don't want the army to be commenting that this opposition. The army should not even be bothered about opposition. The army should be bothered about the defense of the country. They should not be bothered with who is opposing the sitting government, because that is not their role. If they do so, it now shows that they have started becoming partisan. And that's why General Mugisha Muntu has advised the CDF to remove the uniform and go and join the politics and go there and start dealing with the politicians. Because the army, so when we are making this UPDF bill, we should separate it from the politics of the day. You cannot use the UPDF bill to solve the political issues of the country. And that's why I don't agree with the president. I don't agree with him when he says that, you see, I have been using this court to resolve a lot of problems. That should be a silent thing with them there. We should not even know that you are using the court to solve your political issues. Really, it would be a very bad thing.
Thank you.
So for me, I really think that the bill is welcome. Even withdrawing it is welcome. But we need to look at this bill very carefully. Where possible, they should even allow everybody to debate about this bill. What happened to the lawmaking process in this country? When we were beginning with the 1995 constitution, they allowed everybody. These days, okay, they will say that they normally will invite people to parliament to give their views, but that process is so much limited. In fact, you can never know when it is there. You have to be very concerned. I think that bill, we need to correct the issues that had been outlined earlier, and also separate them from the political understanding of the Supreme Court ruling. I know the Supreme Court ruling has created a lot of political flair and jubilation. We need to keep it separate so that we deal with the matters of defense, we deal with the matters of security. In that bill, if you have also seen, these days there is this joint working together where the police, the army, and the others work together. And it seems that now they want to institutionalize it. I really feel that the police should be kept as police, and the army kept as army, the CID kept as CID, okay, and so on. And
we shall come back to this, Dr. Ojambo. Let me move to you, Honourable Matembe. You've had the submissions from this gentleman, but ideally, what do you think, or what would you suggest as the most pressing or most concerning issues that you think should actually be incorporated in this amendment to address
I don't think I will answer that question. I want to make comments on this generally.
No problem.
First of all, I'm not an army person. I've not read that law. I have not been following it that it was even in court. But I want to first say he's so diplomatic, and I'm never a diplomatic person. He's saying the army is thinking that they are the one in charge. It is not thinking. They know they are in charge. And they're actually practicing it through the commanding chief and then his son. It's very, very clear. The president has already said in the Sabarwany, every time there is an issue which doesn't need any army thing, in the Sabarwany, they are going to see his fire. Okay? Now he put his son there, who together they know that they are the one in charge of this nation in their capacity as army people. That's what it is. It is very clear. You can go on with your diplomacy, but for me, I see the things as they are. You see, Mr. Lecturer, what you are saying is what takes place in a democratic governance, liberal democracy, where the army are under civilian. The army is never supposed to be above civilian in a democratic governance. Our constitution was very, very clear. The power belongs to the people, and those people will exercise it through their, of course, free and fair elections and all that kind of thing. But having done that, the army and its commander, you know, the CDF is like you go in the Ministry of Health, you'll find their permanent secretary, or you find the directors. They are like officers under those respective ministries.
True.
So he's supposed to be an officer under the Ministry of Defense.
True.
And the Minister of Defense is supposed to be above the CDF. You people, one time when they held this meeting, was it in Tororo? Where was it? Where the CDF was invited as the chief guest or what? And the minister was the minister was there, the one like under the CDF. And so in practical terms, this government is a military government. And what is so painful is that when Museveni went to the bush to fight, he was fighting to remove the power from the military and place it into the hands of civilians, so that the military should do its role. And as you know very well, the military in all other nations is supposed to be concerned with the territorial defense of Uganda. The military is not supposed to be the one looking sure whether there is peace in Uganda, whether what. That is the police. The police has its role to make sure that the law is enforced here in this country. The military has its role to ensure that Uganda is not invaded. It is safe. They protect it. But now the military here is used to fight Ugandans themselves. I'm Sabarwany, they are going to see me. How can you be Sabarwany in your country when you are supposed to be protecting the interests of your people, but you are now the one fighting them and you are leading the fight? Now, having said that, I want to say that it's unfortunate. She told us the context in which the law is being made. Me, I want to change that, to bring also my context. My context should be the amendment of this law, withdrawal of this law, should be related to what the army commander said and her father when the judgment of the Supreme Court came. The father said, the president said that the decision of the Supreme Court is wrong. He even went ahead to say that some of those people who decided are serving foreign interests. It's only a few, some of them like two, who are serving Uganda's interest. You see the context now? the boss, his son came in as, of course, the right hand of the Sabarwany. And for him, he said, this can't be. We are not even going to take this. He was even saying it at, is it Teresita? What was it?
Teresita.
When he said for them, they are not going to take this, the military is the foundation. Can you imagine that the military, UPDF, is the foundation of economic transformation of this country? Since when was the CDF and the Uganda Defense Forces, that is Uganda
People's Defense.
Uganda People's Defense Forces, that is the foundation of the economic and social transformation of this country? In which way? In which way? And he was saying that for us, we can never abandon the mission of the army in this country by surrendering it. And by the way, Museveni said, the court is not the ruler of this country. He said it clearly, that the Supreme Court is not the one which rules this country, is not the ruler. In other words, I and my son, we are the ruler of this country, and it does not matter which decision they bring. For us, we are concerned to do what we want to do. If the withdrawal of this bill was not in conjunction with what? With the Supreme Court, I mean, it's okay. Why should they amend the law? I mean, why should they continue and debate the law and then call it to amend it, to bring it in conformity with some of the decisions of the Supreme Court? It would be okay if the removing of it was followed by good interest or goodwill. But this one, what drives it is to change it and make sure that they make that law into what they want it to be, but not what the Supreme Court is saying. So that is the biggest problem, the intention of withdrawing it. Secondly, I want to say, is this the first time the Supreme Court gives orders on what should be done in specific areas, laws everywhere? All these orders are never fulfilled. The only order which I know was when they wanted to change the Electoral Commission, they put the word independent Electoral Commission, and otherwise it remained the same. This is not the first time the Supreme Court has made orders and then they withdraw the laws and they amend the laws. They never do. They never do. But now it is coming. Thirdly, if the Supreme Court ordered what it ordered, what was the priority in implementation of that order? Because if the Supreme Court says no, the civilian should never be confined by this military court. Is this the third week now? And people have continued to be detained illegally in prisons. Ugandans' human rights have continued to be abused. But what is happening? The priority is bring the law, put it here, you let it do what me as your father and you, my left hand, let it do what we want. And indeed, when they go and put there what they want, I can guarantee here, when I talk, things happen. I can guarantee that with the type of parliamentarians we have in that parliament, this law will put whatever evil doings they want to do, secure by using this law to make military supersede over Ugandans, to make a military be the ruler of this country. And let me tell you, the very members of parliament there in that caucus will be bought the way they will. Now that election is at hand, they need money, they will just pass everything. You tell me that, why do you say that, Miria? This is why I say, I have always said things, and the other day when we were on NBS, I said, but you wait. In fact, around the corner, the NRM is about to call the caucus, and they amend this law. And immediately the next Friday, they called the caucus. Now, remember, when the parliament invited the army commander, CDF,
yeah.
and there is commander-in-chief, they are all the same, army commander, commander-in-chief, son, father and son. When they called him to account for his misconduct in using his position, which is very wrong, using his position and being a politician when he's not a politician, and the father looks on and supports it. The parliament, which is the supreme, by the way, authority of this country, among the three organs of the state, what I know, the parliament has a right to summon the president to appear before it. But the president has no right to summon the parliament. But all he does is summoning it all over the place, even through Achitura to graze cows. Okay? Now, I see them going there grazing cows. Now, they summoned this man who is supposed to be serving under civilians. And this is parliament. He refused to appear before parliament. Instead, he said that the parliament are clowns and idiots. And he declared that they will see me, I'm going to mobilize and demonstrate against them. Okay? We waited. Of course, he didn't go. You saw the other day. You saw what happened the other day. He mobilized the people, Simanyi PLU, Perau, to demonstrate against parliament. And guess what? I saw those clowns, some of those clowns and idiots were in fact in front when they were demonstrating. Some of those clowns and idiots were in front, leading the demonstration, declaring that even we people who talk about him, we are going to see them. And I said, oh my God, where is Uganda? Where is Uganda? That even members of parliament, whom this man defies and called crown, of course they have demonstrated that some of them are crowns. You know the crown, not crown. I don't know how to say the word clearly. What is it?
Clown.
They are clown and idiot. I saw one of these idiot clown is the whole member of parliament from Bushenyi, my home where I come from. But the other idiot clown was the one holding the microphone. They say he was from somewhere. I don't know, but I knew the Kasanda. But he was the one swearing that they are going to see us, those people. I imagine he can't say the Matembes, but he could have said, but for me, my name, they fear it. So, because God is there protecting it. But that's what he was saying. So, what I'm saying really is that this country is led by only President Museveni and his son and his wife and his brother and his family. I say it without very clearly, with confidence. And I say, Ugandans, can't you really wake up? Can you imagine this man, Besigye? Poor man. Even if he had committed whatever
Crime or offense.
Because right now he's not even charged, he's completely illegally in prison. Surely, doesn't human heart show that when this man is sick, they should take him to the hospital? And yet, all Ugandans, Simanyi, the Archbishop of Uganda, all these chief, actually, if they call us politicians. But what about Christians? What about these Muslims? What about the Pentecostal churches? Can't they at least constitute themselves into godly people and say, please, have love. President Museveni, have love in your heart and save this man who is dying in prison. And if he died today, they shall go and bury, just like who is this man who passed on?
Segirinya.
Just like Segirinya, and it will be a forgotten story. But my God, I'm appealing to God to descend to Uganda and redeem me.
Thank you, Honourable. So Honourable has talked about a lot of things, but in summary, I'll say she's actually highlighted a lot of contradictions that a lot of people also talk about. I don't know how you would respond to this, but also the other issue that Dr. Ojambo earlier raised, the consultative nature of amendments. First of all, I don't know how consultative this particular bill that is now being withdrawn, how consultative the process was, and in the redrafting, how is it going to be? Just probably to respond to Dr. Ojambo's question. That's what you had hinted at.
Wow. There are a lot of things that have been raised by Dr. Ojambo and Dr. Miria. But I want to restrict myself to the specifics. And you did mention earlier on that you asked me to talk about the caucus.
Yes.
And I told you that the caucus did not discuss the details of the proposed amendments. All it did was to agree in principle that let the Attorney General do his work, because it's within the powers of the Attorney General, within his wisdom. He can withdraw the proposed amendment bill. Let him do his work, and once he has prepared the draft, we can then discuss the merits of that draft. So as it is right now, the NRM has not pronounced itself on the proposed amendments. All it has said is that in its wisdom, it's better to discuss those proposals comprehensively so that we look at them on a case-by-case basis. So some of the sentiments that are being expressed outside here is really the assumption that this is what is going to happen. And for me, I do not want to go into that. I want to wait until those specific proposals have been presented before the caucus, and then we go into the details of those proposals. Remember, like the Councillor Awich here did mention earlier on, that you see, the law is dynamic, and the law exists for management of society. And if there are proposals for amendment that will be presented by the Attorney General or the Minister of Defense that contradict the spirit of the Constitution, they will be seen in that merit, and the caucus will take a decision on that basis. But if there are those that, by the way, are also wished by the Supreme Court ruling, because the Supreme Court ruling in itself is supposed to form a body of the law, and it is very, very, very okay for cabinet, and in this case for the Attorney General, to look at the rulings and be able to see which are those specific provisions that contradict the spirit of our Constitution, that require remedial action within the body of our laws. And there is only one institution that can make those amendments. It is Parliament. So let us not imagine that to amend the law is to go against the spirit of the ruling of the Supreme Court. No. In fact, the Supreme Court identifies those specific provisions, okay, in its ruling. It identifies areas that need remedial action, and the Attorney General is bringing them in those in the proposal. But I do not want to preempt the specific provisions, clauses that will be introduced by the Attorney General. But when they come, I'm sure we shall still be here, and then we shall look at the merits of some of those proposals and be able to have a very informed conversation around them.
Thank you, Honourable. Yes, Major.
I just want to pick from there that a legislative process is not intended to defeat a court ruling, especially a Supreme Court ruling. You don't make a law to defeat a Supreme Court ruling. It's not. That is a principle in law. So I do not expect a legislation, a provision coming against a Supreme Court ruling. as the Honourable says, it's just to operationalize the ruling. And I wonder why Professor Ojambo is worried, because if the court sounds that, why not operationalize it? Because you are saying it looks like the withdrawal is following a court. Even if it did, there's nothing wrong about it. It's just a respect for the rule of law. But it came at a time, or you already know that there was a bill in Parliament. And I think it is logical and fitting that you pull it out and make a comprehensive proposal. Apart from that, you had asked Honourable about comments that would make about what our two colleagues have said. I have brief comments about it. For example, the role of the caucus. Doctor wonders whether calling a caucus makes everything looks an NRM thing. Every party in Parliament has its caucus. UPC has a UPC caucus, FDC has a FDC caucus.
Do they meet at State House? Sorry to intervene, allow me. The whole, what this man is saying is very right. A party is not supposed to use the resources and the premises of a government. We have said about that many, many times. The caucus which meets at State House, or the money of State House, whatever they spent is supposed to be the state, not the party. And yet they ignored, and they have you ever had UPC or DP or NU going to meet at State House using the resources of State House? The party is equal to the state. Whether you urge or not, me, I tell things which are open. Tell us which party ever meets at State House.
Thank you. Honourable picks that argument. That shows me that the point I was raising was intriguing. So it is good that she intervenes. But I'm saying every party has its caucus. Now, if agreed that every party has its caucus and the point of contention is where it meets, then that is another level of debate. But at least the principle is every party has its caucus. Now, for us, why we have been meeting is because an incumbent president, even during campaign, is a president, is a head of state. So with all the security around it and all that, it makes differentiating difficult. So we have been meeting. But for facilitation, for example, if there's need, we do it as a party. And we do it with our party organ. If, for example, we needed to pay money, that is a party organ arrangement, not government. So it is, if we just find ourselves that the sitting president is our chairman, and therefore with all the security around the incumbency, we found ourselves sitting in State House. But at least we know that we have agreed that parties as its caucus, and therefore every party has a right to discuss. Even NUP can discuss this withdrawal wherever they are. Even FDC can. So I don't see anything very wrong with us discussing. So, Professor, that shouldn't worry you. And your slight comment about thinking that NRM is about to go is that Honourable Matembe cited Article 1, power belongs to the people. We have no problem with going, only that it should go according to the law. We consult the people in a regular and fair election. So Article 1 is there. So if you think it is about to go, then the masses will decide in 2026. The army is definitely not NRM, and we don't wish it to be as such. That's why some of us who are senior army officers are in the party after retiring. So take it from us that NRM is a political party like any other. So those of us who are with a major rank of a senior officer, we are there after retirement. So I don't see any worry about that. What does the president mean when he said he solved the problem with using the army? I think this was in a specific case. You see, doctor, maybe you don't know the situation in Karamoja. A Karamojong raid, for example, to come to Teso or to Kapchora or to Mbale or to Lang or to Acholi, they come in a formation of a division. Like 5,000 people, all armed with a rifle. Just try to imagine that situation. And you're a head of state and you're supposed to pacify that. I remember I one time went to Karamoja with late Honourable Monyo Jok, and we found in a field like less than 6 football pitches, two communities, Bokor and Maseniko, had clashed. And about 1,000 people had died in that small pitch. So you see the gun situation. Now, the response the President Museveni was saying is that in this complex situation where you have civilians forming themselves into a division with guns, ideally you would have somebody charged in the magistrate's court. But it wasn't functioning. Now, where there was a law saying if you are in possession of a gun, you are charged in military court, that law, which is now challenged and deleted, solved that mischief. That is his cry. Now, if the Constitutional Court says what actually solved the problem is unlawful, then be it. That is what the court has said. But he is saying, for a fact, these people who form themselves into a whole division, 5,000, not 100, not 1,000, and they come up to Kitgum to raid cows. Those ones, he said it worked. So I want to be put in context. About the court discussion, I think we need to understand that when a court ruling is passed, there's a principle which says don't discuss a matter before court. Okay? We all know that principle in Latin. The principle...
Only if you have interest in it.
Now...
Not to everybody.
Now, the thing is, after a court ruling, court rulings are discussed even at universities. That is why students learn those cases. So it is absolutely right for anybody in Uganda to discuss a court ruling, including the CDF. What is not right is that you must discuss, criticize, disagree, but respect it. So we shouldn't make it look like court rulings are not discussed. But whatever you say, even if you say the judges were stupid, you are bound to
Judith, let's correct impression. Yeah. I didn't say that I don't want a CDF to discuss or comment on the court ruling.
To ask us to be
what
brief,
I said is that you cannot say, you have no powers to say that what they did is stupid and you will not accept it. As who?
But surely the truth is, I know you counsel, you are a lawyer. The truth is there are three power state organs. There is the legislature, there is executive, and there is judiciary. And each organ is supposed to respect the other and to relate with one another. And good enough, the judiciary through the Supreme Court has the final say on matters that if the legislature is questioning this or the executive is questioning this. Now, when the judiciary takes that decision, these other organs of the state are supposed to respect that institution. And now to see the head of state standing up and saying the judiciary decided wrongly. Really? In all honesty, you are a lawyer and you come here and tell me, and the army which is supposed to be securico comes out and threatening the judiciary by saying they did wrong and for them they are not going to follow. Honestly, in good faith. Are they supposed to do that? The head of state and the army commander?
You were saying I should be brief, but you say I would have finished, but the interventions have been there.
You should.
Now I want to finish, but saying that I want to say that take all the comments as a matter of discussing the court ruling. But as I said, even the DPP and even the Attorney General, the withdrawal of this bill is in consonance of implementing. But it does not mean nobody should criticize and show his disappointment with it. We said you can't discuss, you can disagree with it, but respect it. So I would like us to see the various comments about as a way of discussing it, but we are yet, the government is in the process, including DPP, to implement it. Because, for example, they say cases there must be transferred. That cases that are in court martial should be transferred to DPP. And all these are things which are in process. Now, about the president and the stakeholders of the bill. First of all, the president has always met parliamentary committees. As I said, always the incumbency with the security. I know he has met them in Nakasero. I know he has met them everywhere. Whenever a committee of parliament wants to meet the president, he has always met them. Isn't it there on record? He has met them. So he will always meet them. And this now takes me to the stakeholders. I hope the army will be able to meet the relevant committees considering this. If it is committee on the Ministry of Defense or legal and parliamentary committee at the drafting stage, they should be able to appear because they are stakeholders. Just like if you're making a law in agriculture, you will call the crop producers, the marketeers, and all those people involved in agriculture. So this will be done. And my opinion is that if the person of the CDF doesn't want to lead this team, I think the deputies there and other stakeholders. So stakeholders meeting in the drafting or making this law is absolute. The president has always met the committee, and I think everybody else will do that.
Well, thank you very much. Honourable George, I know you want to leave, and I'll just give you like a minute or so to just give us a few concluding words, and then we can allow you leave.
Thank you so much. Again, like I said last week, that conversations are very, very important. The day our institutions die are the days when we remain silent. Disagreement is part of statecraft. Institutions will always have differing opinions on a very specific matter, but that is actually where a solution is always sought. So where there is a meeting of minds, well and good. So the president is a citizen like any one of us, and he is free to express an opinion. Of course, the difference being that he is the head of state. So his opinion usually has a lot of influence. Okay, but I would want to say that it is not the first time that a president has expressed an opinion on a matter, and Ugandans have not agreed with him. And even the caucus has sometimes taken a completely different opinion from that of the president. So the president, as the head of state, is at liberty to express his opinion on a matter, specifically when that matter touches on governance. So I see a situation where going into the next phase, when this draft is produced, that there's going to be extensive consultations with the different stakeholders. In fact, the president, when he was briefing the caucus, said he had had engagement with even the justices of the Supreme Court who made this decision. He also had conversations with the UPDF High Command. He has had consultations with the cabinet, and now he was consulting the parliament. So the scope of consultation is wide, and in the end, it's going to be Ugandans who will make the final decision on this matter. They have to take an interest in the specific provisions of this draft and make sure that they influence as much as possible the final outcome of this specific piece of legislation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Honourable George. We do appreciate you for your time. It is unfortunate that you have to leave,
I
but
really
I know
wanted to comment about the regional interventions in the DRC.
Yeah, briefly.
And,
Briefly before we
and
actually. That's what we are going into after the break. But you could just comment briefly, and you set the pace for what we shall talk about later.
Wow. It's really unfair that I'm not going to be there in the conversation, because this is really where
Tell
That's
them
your
to
area.
wait. You
That's
tell those ones to wait.
my input is. But
Tell them to wait. You
know,
finish this.
What
is happening in the Eastern DRC is not something that has started now. But there is, in our current situation, where even within the treaty, let me talk in the context of the East African community, we still have all the partner states. Why we call them partner states is because they are sovereign states. There is no amount of regionalism that can replace the competencies of each individual state. And in the case of the DRC, as much as we are intervening regionally, whether it is SADC, whether it is EAC, for as long as the DRC does not address the question of state competence, there is no amount of international intervention that will resolve the problems in the DRC. For as long as the DRC does not deal with political issues internally, there is no amount of regional intervention that will stop political contradictions flaring up into conflicts within the DRC. For as long as the DRC does not address the question of ethnic, multi-ethnic identities, there is no amount of regional intervention. There is just how much external interventions can do in a matter that finds expressions in different forms. They can be ethnic, they can be political, they can be religious. So as long as DRC still has an incompetent state, we are going to see these coming up again and again and again and again. So for me, there has got to be deeper reflection, deeper conversations within the Democratic Republic of Congo. And whatever intervention takes place there should be to facilitate the actors in the DRC to come up with the internal solutions to their own problems so that they begin to own it. Yeah, so that they begin to fashion the DRC in the best that they can to service their interests. Because the rest of the people who will come into the DRC have an interest, and that interest is not necessarily in the best interest of the people of the DRC. Yes.
Thank you very much.
But before he runs away, because me, I'm sorry, those things I don't follow, but how can the DRC sort itself out when actually I'm going to call sharks and lions and, are around and they flare, when you spark off the fire or the
flare?
They flare.
It flares
yes,
up, yes.
They flare. Because for me, from long ago, these people, they develop, why you call yourselves development partners, it is not only the foreigners in terms of the whites that are sharks and the lions and hyenas to the wealth of DRC, which they go to grab. But the very brother countries and sister countries are also grabbing. And since they're interested in grabbing that wealth, now you say that unless they organize themselves, how can they organize themselves when the sharks nearby are also, instead of being their friends to sort them out, they are also participating in grabbing, like the land grabbing in this country, in Uganda. I want to listen to that one.
Major here is more competent to talk about, but in the military there is what they call the points of least resistance. These are really the weak points. Usually people will find entry points in those areas. Now, if you do not build capabilities as a state, first of all, the state has got to exist. Congo does not have the presence of the state in some of these places that...
I agree. I've always said it here.
That's true, because they haven't been able to do it.
So because you do not have a state has territory, a state has control, a state has authority. So if you do not project capacity of the state, then the other actors will find it very easy to go and becomes a playground. Even Uganda here had become a playground for all these sorts of things in the 70s and the 80s. It's true, for a fact, until
I was here, it was
exactly
not a playground.
Uganda
being a playground.
Can I say something to support Honourable before he leaves? I've always insisted that, and I've always given very crude example. Doctor knows it. I've always said the DRC competency to have the state, or the lack of it now, is a big problem. What example have I been giving? I've been giving the example of a yellow bicycle. I said in Uganda, there are 73,000 villages. In all the 73,000 villages, there's NRM yellow bicycle, and they are riding. What does that mean? It means the state has the competency to be everywhere. In the past in Gulu, you couldn't even put on
The state, the NRM, the party.
You see what I was saying? Now again, you are saying NRM is the state.
I told you this is a good example.
The party.
For example, during the war in the north, could you put on Museveni's yellow t-shirt?
No.
You couldn't put on the yellow t-shirt in the entire Gago. You couldn't put on the yellow t-shirt in the entire Moro. And that would show you how state systems were not at grassroots. Because you couldn't put on a t-shirt, okay? Leave alone walking. Therefore, what I'm saying, it did happen in Kenya. In Kenya, there was a district where thugs control a whole district. And there was no education. The little girl went up to Rutu and talked about education. The girl became a celeb. So where you have,
Which district is
there
that?
was a you can Google where there was a celebrity girl. You can check from the celebrity girl who talked about education, where there was insecurity and there was no education. Now, that ability or inability of a state to have part of your area where you don't control and there's no education, what is that? And it is worse in DRC, where you don't have police, you don't have courts of law, you don't control the whole territory. I have done this because I have used the yellow bicycles as a crude example of show of authority. Some people tend to demonstrate their points in a sexy way. Me, I've chosen not to use a sexy way, but I've chosen to say, if there was in Katakwi, where the state was not existing and against Museveni, there wouldn't be a yellow bicycle. If there was a problem in a Ntungamu, where the whole district was against Museveni, there wouldn't be a yellow bicycle. So the state in DRC needs to exist, to be strong and to be able to defend a country by itself. If you are strong and capable, you really even have the ability to stop those scavengers that Honourable Matembe is saying.
Thank
but
you.
if you are there throwing your hands that I need to be helped, I need to be helped, and you are nowhere as a state, as a government, now what do we do?
Thank you very much, Mitchell. We will.
Yeah.
You want to say something before we,
then I go.
because we need to go into a break. But after that, yes.
Yeah. You know, after I think it was in 1997, 1998, the Kabila rebellion against Mobutu. If you read the literature around that movement, there is, I think, one of the military commanders who said they didn't expect that the Mobutu government was so weak. So they had prepared themselves militarily, and it was very easy to take over the government of Mobutu militarily. Unfortunately, after they captured power, to sustain it became a what? A big problem. They did not put in place a political infrastructure, and they were not able to build a state that would guarantee peace and stability. So there was total confusion, and that has continued up to date, that there has not been a strong government that has been able to build state institutions to be able to safeguard the country from the scavengers that the Honourable Matembe is talking about. So the country is vulnerable, and it will continue to be so for as long as the DRC does not deliberately invest in building a strong state.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honourable. And on that note, we take a break. We shall continue with this discussion about the role of regional blocs in resolving the M23 DRC crisis. In the first session, we were focusing, of course, on the withdrawal of the UPDF Amendment Bill. This is the Chat Show. We'll be back after the break.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break, and I'm glad that you're still with us here on the Citizens Chat Show. My name is Judith Atim once again. In the first part of our discussion, we were focusing on the withdrawal of the UPDF Amendment Bill, and now we want to focus more on the role of regional blocs in resolving the M23 DRC crisis. Well, before we went into the break, a bit of part of that conversation had already started. But also, as you can see, Honourable George Odongo is not with us right now. He has other business to attend to, but nonetheless, my esteemed panelists are still ready to carry on with this conversation. But just a little bit of background to what we're talking about. Recently, on February 8th, that's about a week ago, the EAC SADC Summit of Heads of State and Government issued a joint communique regarding the security situation in the DRC. The summit was attended by 9 presidents and 5 other heads of state delegated representatives. So there was generally good representation from across the 2 blocs. And just some highlights of the communique randomly. 1, urging the DRC government to protect lives and property, uphold legal and moral principles of respecting peace missions in DRC, such as MONUSCO and others. There was also an issue of cessation of hostilities and an immediate ceasefire, restoring essential utilities and supply lines for food and other essential commodities to ensure humanitarian support, peaceful resolution of the conflict, political and diplomatic engagement remain the most sustainable solution to the conflict in the Eastern DRC. That's what the heads of state said. And they also called for an immediate reopening of Goma Airport. I know this conversation already started before we went to the break. And what Honourable was telling us about the need for the DRC to build itself, build its own capacity in order to respond to these kinds of threats that we are seeing. But before we delve further into that, just your quick thoughts about the significance of this joint communique issued by these blocs in addressing this M23 DRC crisis. If I'll start with you.
Yeah, you see the regional blocs in East and Southern Africa have been having a lot of conflict, and that conflict has really come out clearly in the recent M23 attack in Congo. I remember last year saying on this show that in my view Tshisekedi was making a mistake, because the East African community had tried to resolve this matter by providing a peacekeeping mission in that area. And Tshisekedi, after some time, said he did not need them. He did not need them. I remember that that group, which was led by Kenya, KDF, Kenya Defense Forces. Uganda was a participant, and many other African countries. And they had tried to, for peacekeeping purposes, not to bring peace to Congo, but because that one we have already agreed that is a tall order. And Tshisekedi rejected. And I remember at that time he was opting for SADC peacekeeping mission, where he succeeded to do that, and the forces started withdrawing. Of course, SADC, South Africa, being the leader, came in and they tried. But there was a pending disagreement between Uganda and Rwanda, which was also having a toll on the whole thing, where each one was blaming the other for supporting M23. And therefore, they had developed M23 Uganda, M23 Rwanda. Now, the recent thing, which later led to a meeting. You remember the first meeting had been called by President Ruto, who is supposed to be the, or not supposed, who is the current chairman of the East African Community. But that meeting, in my view, did not succeed because the serious protagonists, one of them did not attend. Tshisekedi refused to attend that meeting, and the others attended online. After failing to do that, Suluhu Hassan flew to South Africa. And when she came back, she organized now a SADC, East African Community meeting, where we had two coming together. And it was supposed to be a physical meeting in Dar es Salaam. Again, in this one, Tshisekedi did not go to Dar es Salaam. He insisted to be online. In fact, he presented online. And that's where what you are reading was reached. Now, my view is, number one, the conflict is now not only in Congo. The conflict has now gone like it was between Uganda, Angola, Mozambique, and Rwanda in 1990s, in the late 1990s, 1997 to 99. And the biggest issue now, and this is why the president has kept quiet about the conflict, and he has not been a very serious protagonist. The more serious protagonists now are President Kagame and President Zuma. And they have developed almost a Cold War there. And therefore, for me, if we don't first of all handle the relationship between East African Community and SADC in Congo, we are not going to make a headway, because each one is showing power there. SADC wants to show that they are the most powerful, and therefore they are the ones who can resolve the problem. East African Community of Mr. Ruto, for it in most cases, it is for public gallery. They do a lot of public gallery, but quietly, the South African forces are in Congo and creating a lot of problems. Remember, at first there was same conflict between Tanzania and Kikwete. Until Magufuli came, there was a very huge problem between Tanzania and Rwanda. So me, I really think that the problem in Congo is a huge African crisis that requires a lot of soul searching, a lot of statesmanship. These Yoweri Museveni's, Kagame's, and these people who have been in power forever need to do some statesmanship so that they don't go there as protagonists. They need to go there as people who are being listened to. But the trouble with our presidents in Africa, they can never be statesmen. They fall out of statesmen because on every event they have interest. And therefore you can never be a statesman when you have interest. Because Uganda already has interest in Congo. Rwanda has interest in Congo. Kenya has interest in Congo. South Africa has serious interest in Congo. So it is very difficult to get a statesman to resolve this matter, because at the end of the day, each one is seen as somebody who is promoting their interest against the other groups of people. And because of that, you have seen now how the M23 is moving on that axis. They have captured Bunagana, they have captured Goma, they were going to Bukavu. Thanks God they were smoked out. Seriously, I wish they smoke them out and finish all of them. But for me, I feel we are not happy Uganda now because of that capturing of that axis, Bunagana and so on and so forth, because of what we had started doing there. Remember, we had even gone there, started constructing roads. The only thing we were remaining to do maybe to take their police and train police and take them there. But now that is quite difficult, because now M23, which is there, seem to be more attached to Rwanda. You will see now, for example, all the people who are living in Congo are passing through Kigali to go wherever they are going. And it's not by mistake. It's not by mistake, including the Romanians who were captured by M23, went through Kigali. It is only the UN which is passing through Uganda, the UN staff, they pretend to be neutral, but you can't also trust them. So me, I think the situation in Congo, and specifically that meeting, is just to cool down the waters. To cool down the waters, and the protagonists are reorganizing. We don't know now what they are planning to do, but I don't see. Of course, they were deceiving us that it was the chairperson of SADC, who is the president of, I think, the president of Zimbabwe. And then the chairperson of East African Community, the president, who are chairing. But I saw Suluhu was the one doing the midwifing, the whole of the thing. But what I know about Suluhu is not like Kikwete or Magufuli. If it was Magufuli, something would have now happened. But Suluhu normally wants to take a diplomatic business approach. I hope it succeeds, but the people he's dealing with, I don't know whether they will take him serious. I mean, they will take her serious. I don't know whether Yoweri Museveni will take Suluhu serious or Kagame. Because with the Kagame, the man is spitting fire. He's spitting fire. He has now no longer hiding. He's not hiding that he is part of that war. Of course, our president has been silent this time, which I thank him. He has been silent. But now, we don't know what is happening with our army, which was there fighting ADF, because they have not told us that it has withdrawn.
Thank you, Doctor. I'll come to you, Honorable. What are your thoughts about these developments?
But the developments, for me, I come here, of course, you called me senior citizen. These things of Congo, if I remember whatever is happening here is like what was happening during our time, even when I was there in cabinet. Because as you remember, this Mugabe threatened to finish this Uganda and Kagame, because it was all overlooting the minerals, the whatever, in Congo. This is the situation. That's what it was. Then afterwards, things, even by the time was it 23 that time? I can't remember. Well, remember it is now 19 years, 23 years, I think, since I left the cabinet, the government of this country. But those things, whatever is happening here, because our people, what hurts me is that the foreigners who are there, the Bazungu, the white foreigners and all that kind of thing, they are benefiting by looting our minerals. And we are so heavily favored by God in Africa here, with all these minerals and everything that we have, that these people focus, the foreigners, the white ones, whom Museveni talks about, they focus on looting us. And for us, instead of uniting together and recognizing that we have these resources, and if we as Africans can work together to help one another, to see how we shall work with one another to benefit from these natural resources ourselves. I wish that's what we were thinking about. But if I can remind you, if you people were not following that time, but for you, you could have been there. This one was still young. And that one. But you remember the Kagame, when Mugabe was threatening, spitting fire, who are you? I'm going to deal with you. The Mugabe, the Kagame, the Museveni, all of them were interested in Congo, in robbing it. And for Kagame, good enough, for them, they robbed as a country, go to resources and what, many things, and use it to develop their country. But here in Uganda, it was specific individuals, timber, gold, who were grabbing. They are there as if to help Congo, but they are grabbing all the resources. And if you remember, I don't know how far that issue has gone, they sued us at World
No, we are paying every year.
Which
We are
court
paying
was that?
$1 million.
International Court.
The International Court of Justice, we were sued, and you know the generals who were looting all these timber and everything, you and I here, we were not there, but you know how much money we are losing to because of that judgment, because of the looters. So that's why I say, how can Congo really settle down and be a country and get its, what did you call it?
Competence.
To build its competence as a state. When the neighbors, the friends, remember it has been under dictatorship for such a long time. One thing I have realized in these African countries, I travel, I have found out that where dictators have dictated over these countries for a long time, they disempower the citizens. The citizens become just helpless and hopeless, and they bow. And even when those dictators get off, the citizens are incapable of pulling up their socks and building their nation. And for me, I see Congo as one of them. Because you can blame them that they have not built their competence, but how can they build? How can you be in your house and you want to build it, and the hyena is snatching from here, the lion is taking from there, the shark is there, and instead of these are helping you to say, let's build our nation like this. So it's extremely unfortunate. Me, I see it as a replica of what had been before, and that's what is now happening. And that's why I really don't like, I resist with the strongest resistance these presidents who don't want to leave power. They want to stay forever, and people see them as their god of this country, and they see them that once they get off, the country is finished. And of course, when they get off, our countries in Africa, they get finished.
Thank you, Honorable. Major.
The Congo situation is really unfortunate, and more unfortunate that we share the same border, and anything can engulf us if there's fire. First of all, you can't know the truth. For example, the simple basic factor is that, is it true that Congo is saying the Tutsi in Congo are not Congolese? Some people say Congolese have never said that. They have said if you're Tutsi and you're in Congo and the history is that clear, you are Congolese. In fact, they argue that senior commanders of the Congolese government are Tutsi. Now, some other school of thought is saying, no, the Tutsi there, they are being told to go to Rwanda, that they are not Congolese. So where is the truth? And also now comes the element of extraterritorial exercise. Because I think I hear Andrew Mwenda. Andrew Mwenda says that since the Tutsi are in Congo, and if their rights are being violated, then a country which ideally hosts the Tutsi like Rwanda has a right to exercise extraterritorial power. But we have all complained. Andrew Mwenda is saying that if, for example, we have Rwandese in Uganda like in Intungam, we have even in the constitution a tribe called Banyarwanda.
Yes.
Now, if they're in Intungam and in the views of Rwanda, they are being persecuted. So Andrew Mwenda says Rwanda has a right to intervene. So it's important.
I want to understand. Because of our borders, the way we border with one another, and we were cut off like this without we cutting ourselves. It so happens that the tribe, that's why you find the Banyarwanda, the Kisoro people are Banyarwanda, and yet they are Ugandans. Okay? Now, and there now Congo borders Rwanda.
It does.
So isn't it clear that they are Batutsi, the Congolese Tutsi Are there no Congolese Tutsi?
That's
is
what he's saying.
that is
we
what
have
I'm
Uganda
saying.
and Rwanda?
So that is what
That's
I'm
what
saying.
is-
Where
So how
is
can
the
they
truth?
invade?
Because the Congo people are saying, the voice from Congo is saying, no, those are our people and they
course
are our
they are.
citizens. Now, some people said no. So where is the truth? Two, what is this import of extraterritoriality? Now, like Honourable Matembe puts the case of Uganda. In the case of Uganda, I've always said, the only tribe that is not cut outside Uganda is my tribe, the Langis. Out of the 65 communities in Uganda, the Teso, even the Morimo, the king, they are subject in Kenya. The Bagiso are in Kenya. These people of Tangadoya in
the
Kenya.
center.
The Agria warrior are in Kenya. One brother is a vice president there, another one is a minister. Same thing uncle in
Tanzania, across.
Yes.
So now,
We
if
speak the same language.
if we import this
the Bahaya.
extraterritoriality, then we'll find ourselves Uganda going to Kenya to protect the Bateso. We find ourselves Uganda going to, because the
South
Acholi in Sudan are
Yes.
bigger than the Acholi in Uganda.
True.
So the Acholi in Sudan are bigger than the Acholi in Uganda.
There are more.
So are we
Yes.
going to go to, you know, the import of extraterritoriality is needs to be understood. So these are what you do. Is this what Rwanda is saying or what Andrew Mwenda is saying? We don't know the truth. So it brings a lot of confusion. So the truth and the mistruth there is really confusing. I like the way Doctor said about the regional blocks. It is good to refresh our mind.
Sorry, Major. If I'm to understand you correctly, are you trying to say that there are narratives that are being perpetrated to suit certain interests or agendas
That's what he's saying.
in this
I
situation?
think
Yes, that
so.
is,
That's
and when
what
it is
he's
on
saying.
record, and when
that's
it's
what
there
he's
on
They go there
yeah.
to protect their people.
Yeah, so that import of the concept of extraterritoriality, Uganda would find itself really overstretched because of the 65 communities under the constitution. It is only the Langis in the middle. The Achulis, the Karamojong, that everybody touches borders. The Banyankole, the Baganda in Karagwe, in Motokula, everywhere. Kasese people are in Sudan, Bafumbira in Rwanda, Batoro are in Congo, Banyora also in Congo, everybody where. Now, if we import the extraterritoriality, then Uganda will be a policeman all over the world, all over the region. So I don't know whether this is a view of Mwenda or a view of any other person, but it's a view that if it is enforced,
He's a spokesperson.
if
of
it is
somewhere.
enforced, then it brings complications in the Congo. The other thing that I want to say is that, like Doctor said, the regional blocks, it is good to note it because it brings us into perspective. We have intersection also. We learned in a primary school intersection sets. Now you have East African countries who are members of SADC, Tanzania, Congo. So they are intersection of East Africa and SADC. So sometimes when it becomes polarized, you don't even know where they belong. Do they belong in SADC? Do they belong here in a polarization? But the beauty is that that intersection anyway helped to bring the two blocks together. We hope that we have taken advantage of the intersection rather than misusing the in the two blocks. So that is it. But my worry is, you now have a situation of SADC in East Africa, and it's a serious worry. You have South Africa, you have Rwanda. South Africa lost 14 soldiers or 13 soldiers, and you have Israel in the mix. And if this was to flare up, a simple thing in East and with SADC and East Africa could turn into a world war. Because if Rwanda starts to conflict with South Africa, and you bring the military hardware of Israel, and South Africa brings Russia or China, and we would find ourselves into an area of a flare of a world war, and we would be written down in history as the countries, the Great Lakes region, to have started world war. Because the belief is that, I saw some joke where somebody was saying, when the foreign affairs of Rwanda and Israel held a joint discussion, it was at the eve of the conflict. And Israel has a view that South Africa doesn't support them. Of course, South Africa as a philosophy doesn't support Israel. Because South Africa said they came out of apartheid. And South Africa believes philosophically that what is happening in Israel and Middle East is apartheid in progression. So they say they can't come out of injustice and they support injustice. That is their philosophy. And that is why they went to the court and sought a court opinion. They were daring to go to international court and sought a court interpretation, which was interpreted in their favor. And that doesn't make Israel happy. So Israel therefore feels that any conflict which involves South Africa, whether South Africa and Uganda, or South Africa and Sudan, or South Africa and Malawi, they will be on the other side. And of course, South Africa has the resources, both material and finance and mankind. So they also have the ability to go around the world. They have the ability to go around the world. And they can bring in Russia or China, whatever technology that is. So we could easily find ourselves starting a third world war. So I really call upon all interest groups that the Congo situation be handled very, very carefully so that we have peace. We shouldn't go down in history as the only country in the world to start, in Africa especially, and Great Lakes region, and where Uganda is. Finally, about the interest of Uganda and the body language of President Museveni. He has handled it so far so well, and he has been calm. Our soldiers are in Congo, and they're in Congo with a legitimate relationship with the Congo. Good enough, we're in different sector. Even the sector where we are, while war is going on, we are still together with the Congolese army. We are operating together. So the war is going on the other side, but the UPDF is on the other side with Congolese army together in a joint operation. So we are okay. So we are okay operating together against the ADF, and the body language of the president has not been seen, although we still have Ugandan cadres like those who have their views, like the Andrew Mwenda, who bring up in the mixed. But Museveni and our UPDF are safe. So the Congo issue worries me. I don't take it simple. It's a matter that can easily flare into a third world war because of the interest there. The countries that are involved seem to be, well, ordinary countries, but you see how it takes a global nature. And that's very unfortunate.
Well, so another issue, of course, that was emphasized at the joint summit is the need to pursue political and diplomatic means to end the conflict. But like you've all said, Congo, DRC has had a history of conflict, of failed peace talks because of the so many interested actors and parties there. How effective is this approach actually to mitigating, to addressing this conflict or this crisis? Can it work? If so, how?
Say it again.
The need to pursue political and diplomatic means to resolve the conflict. That was one of the recommendations from the joint summit. But how possible is this? Is it even feasible, looking at the fact that DRC has had this complicated history of failed peace talks and the many actors that we see being involved in the conflict?
Of course it is possible. You know, there's a general rule that to every problem there's a solution. Even HIV/AIDS, we may not have the medicine. It's just because our human mind has not clicked the right knob. So what is impossible? President Kagame says that all other peaceful avenues has been explored, but the Congo government does not take the mantle. That is his view. In his view, there are peaceful solutions, but Congo has failed. So why don't we explore it? Congo is also saying their version of the story. Therefore, there are several negotiations which are on the table. For example, one of them is that the integration of M23. The integration of M23 in one of the peace talks was that Congo had accepted that these are our citizens. They started a revolution, a revolt, let's agree. But the point of contention became that M23 wanted, if they integrate, to be a separate army, a brigade or a division, whatever. So the Congolese government is saying, no, if you already come and join the national army, then why don't you integrate? And that became a big thing. And it stopped it, and the war continued. But to answer your question is that to every problem, there's a solution. Problem exists because of solutions. Therefore, more discussions, including the resolutions that appeared to be working but were abandoned, should be engaged, because it would be the only way. Because in my opinion is that even if these people overthrow a government, there will be a circle again. We have seen it. Mobutu went, Kabila came, and then the Kabila too. And now a circle of revolt. So how sure are the M23 that they will be there anyway? Moreover, if you are talking as a small, you are talking as a small ethnicity, then how will you govern the white country? Then we're going over a round circle again. This time we'll start from the north, from the south, from everywhere. So I really think that peaceful solutions should be resolved. President Kagame says there are peaceful solutions on the table. Why don't we say pick us a copy? Or let him show us a copy of where those peaceful solutions are, and then we pick it up.
Interesting. Dr. Ojambo.
Yeah, the peaceful resolution of the Congo conflict is the only way to go. The only trouble is what I said earlier. Who are involved in these peace talks or peaceful resolutions? So long as it is Kagame, so long as it is all these leaders who have been in Congo forever and who want to use Congo for their own benefit, they will never allow it to succeed themselves. Because if you look at the M23, this is almost the third time they are coming up. The first time there was a peace resolution, in fact in Kampala here, and we thought that that problem was going to be resolved. They even appointed President Kenyatta to be the arbiter. But the trouble, I have told you that majority of these African leaders are not like the Mandelas used to be. They are not like the Nyereres used to be, that they go somewhere and somebody cannot point a finger in his face. They go there, they are talking, and when they begin talking, they annoy the other party, and the other party has to leave. But Congo, as we have been talking, it is a very complicated thing. In fact, many people have done studies on Congo. And when you read the conclusions, you don't see them leading you to a solution. For example, people have suggested that Congo is too big. Why don't you cut it into smaller nations? But again, quickly, we remember South Sudan and the Sudan question. We thought that when South Sudan moves off from Sudan, there will be a solution. It is now a worse place to be. In fact, South Sudan, if Ugandan government pulled out today, it would collapse in the evening. We saw the problem between Eritrea and Ethiopia. We thought that when Eritrea is separated from Ethiopia, we would have peace there. It is worse. You saw the problem in Somalia. They created, I don't know, Somaliland, Republic of Somalia, I don't know which one. But now we don't know which one even is governing the place. So that solution does not come because the problems are not the size. It's not the size. The problem is the ability to run the state. For example, Algeria is bigger than Congo. Algeria in size is bigger than Congo. Why don't we get the same problems in Algeria? Yes. You can go and check.
Okay.
But why don't we get the... So for me, I think right now you need statesmen, first of all. We need a statesman who can come into this matter, and that statesman should not be these people with a lot of conflict of interest. Number two, you need to see the African Union. What is the African Union doing? Because if the African Union collapsed, we can also organize for its funeral and we call it off. We need to see sincere EC coming up, whereby, for example, my question has been, why did they even invite Congo to be a member of EC without resolving?
Thank you, Doctor. Honourable Miria,
What
and
do you
then
want me to say?
we just your concluding remarks. We are actually we've run out of time.
For me, I don't know. I'm not here to offer a solution because I don't see it. I only say people may laugh at me, but there are things which are beyond us, and we commit them to our God. Because for sure, as the doctor here says, as long as the people who could be helping Congo to stabilize, are interested in its resources to enjoy them on their own. If at least the Africans were saying, identify, we say we have resources here, we have natural resources here, we have natural resources. Let us now unite together in looking at these resources as ours as a continent, and then find a way of working together to consolidate ourselves, and then we are helped by the other who rob us of them when we are united. And for them, we may use their technology and that kind of thing. If we are united, we can be able to negotiate properly with those robbers, so that for us in the end, we benefit from these resources. But as long as that we are there to grab from our own brothers and sisters, I don't see who else can come and pretend over this peacefully to get Congo to unite together as a nation peacefully. Who will chair them? Who will be in charge? You talked of AU. For me, actually, I say AU, those people, the heads of state at AU, they are just united in against their citizens. Because for me, for instance, you talk to me of AU. Which country does AU ever protect or defend? They defend one another. Do they ever get together and say, are you president? No. I think it's high time. Enough is enough. Let the citizens be free. Have you ever had any head of state? They are united in robbing us, in killing us, in torturing us as citizens.
Thank you, Dr. Major.
My conclusion, since we have had two separate topics, is one, the first one is that court ruling was good. It argumented, discussed the law, and government is in the process of complying, and therefore all stakeholders should uphold the rule of law, and that is what it is going to happen. So we thank the Supreme Court for opening our eyes, and everything will be put in place, and that one step is the withdrawal of the bill. So it's a right step in the right direction. On Congo, I believe that one of the active members in this conflict is our senior old boy of Ntare School, that is His Excellency Paul Kagame. I trust in his wisdom, and I hope that he will continue to press. Like he says, he has never missed any conference. He says, and wasn't he in Tanzania?
He was there.
He says every conference, every meeting that has been called, because he's interested to the peaceful resolution, he has attended. So I invite the old boy to put all his wisdom so that we have peace in Congo.
Okay, thank you very much. 1 minute for you.
Yeah, me just to talk about the withdrawal of the bill is a good thing. We just hope that nobody thinks that he can use the legislative arm to defeat the judiciary. And also, when they are doing that, they should remember that UPDF is a national body. It should not be attached to any party or party interests.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much to all of you for your insights regarding this conversation on the withdrawal of the UPDF Amendment Bill and the role of regional blocs in resolving the M23 DRC conflict. My name is Judith Atim. Thank you very much for staying with us. This is the Citizens Chat Show. We'll be back next time. See you then, but don't forget to subscribe and drop us a comment in the comment section. Thank you.